Vasily Lomachenko faced off against George Kambosos Jr., putting on a vintage performance, which culminated in a brilliant 11th round finish as Lomachenko targeted the body, leaving George Kambosos hardly any chance of recovering, while Loma became a 3-time world champion as he won the IBF World Lightweight title. For the fight itself, I think going into it, George Kambosos Jr. was definitely the underdog, especially coming off that performance over Maxi Hughes, which many considered a robbery. Ironically, Vasily Lomachenko came off a fight with Devin Haney, with many calling that a robbery itself. And I guess with this fight, there's a curiosity to see if Lomachenko still had the desire to keep going, despite himself feeling screwed over by the boxing politics in his last fight. But personally, I felt in the opening rounds we saw Lomachenko really assert his dominance, really looking to put the pressure on Kambosos. And for me, I actually felt George start the fight pretty well, targeting the body of Loma as he was trying to download what was in front of him. However, going into the second round, you could tell the pressure from Loma was going to be the consistent presence of this fight, as he was continually always in front of him, using constant feints with that lead hand, dipping to his right, creating that threat of him changing angle, while Loma's in and out pendulum step was really creating havoc for Kambosos, as he just couldn't figure out his timing when to throw out the jab, as we saw him peel away the lead hand before targeting the body and going up top. While George would also stick out his lead hand at times for too long, which in turn Loma was able to counter with the backhand. Going into round 4 and 5 as the fight progressed, Lomachenko's control only intensified, with lightning fast counters, while we also saw him use his angle changes, getting on that outside position turning Kambosos. I also loved how Loma would change how he would throw his left hand, either throwing it as a cross or a left hook, as he clearly identified Kambosos changing the right hand positioning when defending to land this. And it wasn't until about round 6, probably Kambosos had his next best round of the fight, as he was able to land a nice left hook as Loma tried to get that outside position, before throwing that right hand to the body of the Ukrainian, which for whatever reason had just stopped throwing. However, I also just think it was the intensity of Loma and the in and out movement where George just couldn't find or get his timing right against him. And it wasn't until Loma was actually committing again, George was able to land. Not to mention Loma was landing significant counters up top against him. And in round 7, we actually started to see Loma really target the body of Kambosos, which I really loved. And you could tell this was actually affecting Kambosos as well, as he was looking to try and reset himself each time Loma targeted it. You could really tell the frustration from Kambosos as he just couldn't figure out the timing, as I just mentioned. And towards the end of the rounds, he would sometimes come out with a moment of aggression, but it just seemed nothing was working. He actually got a cut at the end of that 7th round, which I think really actually affected him in terms of making him very indecisive in terms of where he should position his guard. And it was interesting hearing the corner of Kambosos as well. I felt he had quite a lot of voices in there and they were telling him different things. Obviously they were wanting him to throw to the body more, but personally I just felt George was very cautious to actually open himself up. Plus the cut just made him even more hesitant, and George would attempt to go to the body of Lomachenko at times, but at this point Loma had really figured him out, as he would counter George Kambosos' jab whenever he threw it out with his backhand, or if Kambosos was to throw the right hand to the body, Loma would throw a sharp right hook before making sure to move after he punched to minimise the effect of any follow-up punch George might have thrown. And I guess heading into the championship rounds, Lomachenko showcased his championship pedigree really, just maintaining that relentless assault on Kambosos, just constantly at that mid-range. And I guess going into that 11th round, just before the knockdown, Lomachenko caught Kambosos with a beautifully timed left strike, knocking Kambosos to the floor. For whatever reason the ref called this a slip, but let's be honest, I think Loma knew he hurt him at this point and went for the kill. Kambosos, clearly hurt, goes into a high guard with Lomachenko throwing a jab before throwing a hard left hand to the body, with Kambosos having no choice but to take a knee. And after getting up, Lomachenko goes in for the final kill, throwing to the body once again with 2 big left hands, and George, clearly not recovered, the ref waves it off while the towel comes in. And personally, I just felt it was a beautiful performance from Lomachenko. I think he was back to his very best in this fight. I think there's also the element of Kambosos Jr. just not being at that level, but I did feel we saw a lot better movement from Lomachenko in terms of that pendulum footwork. We just saw him being a lot more active, while his counter punching was terrific as well. And overall, you just can't deny it was just a great victory for Lomachenko. Personally, I just felt as well for Kambosos Jr. it was a poor game plan from his team. For whatever reason, he should try to play to his strength as the counter puncher, However, he was just far too hesitant, and he didn't throw enough punches to really keep Lomachenko at bay. He was very hesitant and gun-shy at times, I felt. But I think as well that was just because of the way Lomachenko approached the fight as well. And if we look at the Compubox numbers for this fight, well, yeah, it's pretty clear that Lomachenko was the superior fighter, landing 50% of his power punches. And unfortunately for George, it's a pretty grim affair to look at these numbers, as he only landed 40 with a punch connection of 11%. That is just not good enough at this level. And well, what's next for both men? With Lomachenko winning that, he's now the IBF lightweight world champion, and I think he will no doubt be looking to get one last big fight in my opinion. He's 36 right now, he will be turning 37, and you've got to wonder when Father's Time will eventually catch up with him. But going off that performance, he looked like he was back to his old self. The likes of Tank Davis and Shakur Stevenson obviously called him out after, so those two fights I think would be very intriguing to see. Personally, I'd like to see the Tank Davis versus Lomachenko fight out of the two of them in my opinion. One, I think it's the much bigger fight. Just stylistically, I just think it would be a better fight, especially with Tank's power and Lomachenko's technical skill. I just think it would be a fascinating fight. While the fight with Shakur Stevenson just doesn't really appeal to me personally, probably play it very similar to the way Devin Haney fought. But I think you'd have to favour Tank and Shakur against Lomachenko at this stage in his career. As much as I think Lomachenko would definitely give them a good fight, it may just come down to how much he wants it in the end. But yeah guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to know. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.